everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Green and Innovative North. This is where it happens. This is where the journey towards a zero-emission future starts. Today we have a full day at our disposal, and together we will be covering several topics, and we will be discussing the road towards a sustainable future. And we will be discussing the metals, the minerals, and all the innovation needed to make it all happen. My name is Härdmark, and I'm a Director of Communications at Svemin, the Swedish Mining Association. And I will be your host today, and do my best to stick to the schedule. We are really happy to see all of you here today after several years of online conferences, so I'm really happy to see you here in flesh and blood. And the theme for this year's environmental summit is the Green and Innovative North. And we cannot stress this enough, how important this part of the country is. The climate transition literally starts in the mines. And the Green and Innovative North is a significant contributor to our future stability here in Europe. Every day, we secure important parts of our raw material supply in this geopolitically fragile situation we're in. But now let's kickstart the Svemin Environmental Summit of 2022 with our CEO, Sunér.
Hi everybody, and very much welcome to the Green and Innovative North and the Svemin Environmental Summit 2022. And as Emma said, we are extremely happy that we actually could have this live and that we can have it here in Kiruna. And I think me and I guess some else of you who are in the audience are extremely happy that we actually are here, because we had some problems and a detour to Norway before we landed very late this night yesterday here to come here. And as Emma said, we're at a special time in history. We have just come out of a COVID crisis, and we came right into a very geopolitically unstable situation with a war in Europe. And all of these has put the shed light on the supply chains and our raw material supply. We have seen disturbances in our value chains. And this has put the light on how we actually get our raw materials. And this is something that we're going to talk about more during the day today. We see that the European Union has put the shed light on this and announced in just a couple of weeks ago that they are putting forward what they will call a Critical Raw Material Act. That will be a very important piece of legislation on how Europe can actually supply the raw materials that we need. And this is not only needed due to this disturbances in the value chains. It's also extremely important that we manage to continue the green transition. And as Emma said, it's actually here that the green transition starts. It's with the building blocks that we can get from the bedrock. And when it comes to Sweden and our Nordic neighbors, especially up here in the north, we know that we have a great potential. We have all the substances that are on the today critical raw material list of the European Union in the bedrock that we could mine for the future. But we also have many of the other building blocks that we need, like steel, copper, etc., that are not yet on these critical raw material list. So how will we be able to do this sustainably for the future? And that is the theme of the day here today. And from the Swedish mining sector, we are extremely confident that we can provide sustainably produced raw materials for Europe and for the world. And you will see a lot of good examples here today on how we actually work in the companies on mining with nature, on biodiversity, how we do our climate transition, and other aspects of the environmental work that we are doing here. So we are very convinced that we can be a sustainable producer and supplier of these important raw materials. And coming back to the Critical Raw Material Act, I think it will be extremely important that the European Union not only looks to how to supply the raw materials with trade and how you can trade it from third countries. We know that we have the potential here in Europe, and we need to enable the fact that we can do exploration here in Europe and that we also can mine in the future. Unfortunately, like many other operations, a mine can never choose its location. And that is extremely important to remember, that we are bound to where we find the raw materials. And that also puts an extra addition on how we can do this sustainably. We need to be better on doing it sustainably than many other operations, actually. But I'm very sure that we can and that we will be a sustainable provider of these raw materials for the future. So with that, welcome very much today, and I hope we're going to have very good discussions on how we can become even more sustainable in our mining operations in the future. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here and see all of you with the same interests in mining and the green environment and the future. As the governor of Norrbotten County and representative of the government, I'm pleased to be here, of course, to meet you all, because one of the main things is to get good networking also. When the world is striving for a green transition, northern Sweden is, I boldly say, leading the way. And I used to say to my friends down in south that it's up here, everything is happening. It's like it's standing still down there. So I'm very bold. We have with both new and established companies and projects like LKAB, SSAB, Vattenfall, Hybrid, Remap, H2 Green Steel, Talga Graphene, Kayab, and etc. And altogether impressive array of excellent showcases that countries and companies stands in queue for both visiting and indeed join our journey by establishing its business here. And there's a queue, I must say, and I think I have 35 ambassadors from different countries this year and last year. It's fantastic. They want to come up and see the green wonder, as they say. And now we also look forward to a larger population in our county. That's a real challenge for us. Norrbotten is largest of the altogether 21 counties with roughly one quarter, 24%, I think it is, of the total land area of Sweden. Or to get an impression what that means in terms of land mass, you could easily fit nations of Austria or Switzerland within the county borders. That's huge. The county of Norrbotten is one of the most sparsely populated regions in the EU, and that's also, of course, a challenge for us. It's only 250,000 individuals here. We are the only county in Sweden with direct borders both to our good neighbors, Norway and Finland. And as for economic strength, you might be aware that Norrbotten County is Sweden's second strongest region after Stockholm in terms of gross regional product per capita. In terms of unemployment rate, there has also been a remarkable shift during the latest decade to a situation where the present unemployment rate is amongst the top lowest in Sweden. And where I lived before, in Sörmland, it's the highest. They have the highest unemployed rate in Sweden. So something is really happening. There are, of course, several explanations behind this development. One fact is the increasing demand for products within core business sectors such as mining, forestry, and hydropower. Another is the human factor. The people who lives here and every day contributes to the most impressive culture of making things happen and getting things done. And when you are screaming, no one is coming from Stockholm, so you have to solve everything here. And I think that's a very good strength in a county like Norrbotten. We do it together and we do it very good. Reflecting on the innovation climate then, the most important things that are happening right now are the huge green investments taking place in the northern part of Sweden, particularly industry, direct or indirect, affiliated with the mining and mineral industry, whether you consider research and development in areas such as space technology, as you find here in Kiruna, with Swedish Space Corporation and S-Range Station. We have long tradition of research and development within sectors of transportation and car test, ICT and telecom, military technology, Arctic urban planning, and much more. The pole position of Luleå University of Technology and the industry has for decades paved the way of where we are standing today. And I think that's important to remember. This is happening because we have been working so hard for a long time to reach this where we are today. There is a rapid development taking place right now and more public initiatives are on its way. My firm prediction is that in the coming period more public inquiries and proposals for economic incentives that are in line with EU's Green Deal and Fit for 55 are to be displayed. The mind shift that we currently see, I contend, is firstly that the business sector in society is taking lead and together with the public sector develop sustainable business models that support this shift. Secondly, the overall and rapid digitalization is a crucial part of making our industry green and in high demand. And these two trends together, I think, is a critical prerequisite for success in the long term. One area of great interest for us here in Norrbotten is the far-sighted decision made by LKAB of recycling mineral deposits that we are to hear more about today. And while we need and indeed should embrace the possibilities with green transition processes, I would like to conclude by addressing some of the challenges that we face now and in the future. While we have made good progress on implementing the Sustainable Development Goals in Sweden as a whole, we must, however, continue to take actions improving the implementation of the 2030 agenda also. In Norrbotten County, as the rest of Sweden and most Western countries, we also experience several challenges that are sorted into the three main sustainable dimensions: social, economic, and environmental. An aging population, a negative flow of migration to Norrbotten, lack of skilled labor in most business and public sectors, low transition from upper secondary school to higher education, housing for all groups in society, accessibility in the most rural parts of our county, and gender equality are just a few topics on the short list. I'm sorry to say that, but we have to handle with that too, of course. My reflection here today is that we do need continue building a mutual trust and respect between enterprises and authorities. I am one of the first to state that we need to work together. No one or no group in society are to be left behind. A comprehensive feeling of empowerment to change society, I believe, is the key for keep moving in the right direction. And finally, we have never seen such rich business dynamics in Norrbotten before as we see today. We have also an extraordinary window, a green window of opportunity shaping our future in the direction we want to see it happen. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lotta.
Thank you for my sticks.
And really encouraging and listening to you for all these projects and who are thriving here in the northern part of Sweden at the moment, and the shift to what the situation was only a few decades ago.
Exactly.
I was thinking it gave a very, very positive picture of this region. But what is the most challenging part of having your role here in the Green and Innovative North?
Since I moved here 1.5 years ago, I think the polarization between different interests has increased, and I think that we must think that everyone in Norrbotten must feel that here is something for us, here is something that I want to stay, but also to be proud of, and that we must keep a good dialogue with everyone. Because now I can feel that the county is a bit, it's a lot of things happening in 5 of the 14 municipalities. But when I meet mayors, they in other municipalities, they can say, okay, it's happening a lot in Boden and in Gällivare and in Kiruna, but what's happening here? What's in it for us? And I think it was the same when I was in Sörmland, but Sörmland is much smaller county. But there was also, and I said, the wave is coming to you also, because I think we need everyone, we need every municipality to be to stepping up, and I think we have a huge lack of people, and we need a lot of more people to stay and to move in. And there is the municipality, they are very important, because nowadays you don't move to a job, you move to a life quality, and that includes your spare time with culture and sports and good schools and healthcare. And so everyone must be on top of that, so we can get more people to move in.
So your challenge is to convince the southern part of Sweden all the benefits.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Great. But according to you, what you have learned so far in your role, what role does the mining industry play for this overall industrialization that we see here?
I must say, I hope we have a new government soon. Well, as an old politician, I was 10 years in the parliament, and they don't know what's happening up here. And I hope when we have a new government we can restart again, because we know my authority, we need a lot more resources. I don't want us to be the break in all this happening, because we have too few experts, and we need more money. That's one thing. But also you can't have. I'm thinking about Norrbotniabanan. And they say, okay, we're going to build that, and now we have an agreement. But, I mean, to build a railway, that's 20, 30 years away. And that's not good enough. We need it here. We need it now. And I'm going to knock at the new government's door and say, hey, you must see what's happening up here in Norrbotten, and we need a lot of resources. And you must see, we are the engine of Sweden. And then you must understand that.
Excellent, good, excellent final words. The engine of Sweden. Thank you very much, Lotta. Thank you. In November 2020, LKAB launched its new strategy for the future, and in the years ahead, they will set a new world record for mining operations, and they will switch from being a supplier of iron ore pellets to carbon-free sponge iron. And you will also expand the business by extracting critical minerals from your mining waste. Now, 2 years down the line, a lot has happened. So let's get a quick update from you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I will more talk about European mining as a key enabler of the green transition and
digitalization. You need to switch on the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
2 seconds.
It's on.
No, it's off.
It's off. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. But I was saying, I will more talk about European mining a key enabler of the green transition and digitalization. We will hear more about our REMAP project later on this day. But Governor, participants, the issues around metals and minerals are significant to how we can secure access to the resources so badly needed for a European sovereignty, welfare and prosperity. The challenge is well known. Climate change driven by emissions of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide. Decarbonization means to substantially decrease our use of coal, oil and gas. The access to electricity, sustainable produced, transmitted and storage, will be central in our strive to pursue the Green Deal. Wind power, solar cells and nuclear power, the number and volumes of metals and minerals vital for electrification of our society are constantly increasing. Today all of Europe is struggling with the Russian war on energy. When it comes to critical minerals, we can see risks like political instability, geopolitical risks, export restrictions from the countries that today dominate the world market. We know that an electric car needs more than 5 times more of those critical metals and minerals compared to a conventional car, and that an offshore windmill for electricity needs more than 4 times more per produced megawatt of these metals and minerals compared to a coal power plant. We all understand the challenges for the upcoming 30 years. Looking at the statistics for Europe, we are extremely dependent on imports. We import 60 to 70% of our needs. REE, rare earth elements, so important for the future, where China is total dominant of the global production. The Russian war in Ukraine has also put the spotlight on how dependent our agriculture sector is on mineral fertilizers. Russia and Morocco stand for half of the European needs for the mineral fertilizers. The rest comes from, among others, Egypt, Algeria. Finland stands for roughly 10 to 15%. Let me take some examples from the company I represent. LKAB, who mines 80% of all the iron ore mined in the EU. First, we have developed the breakthrough new technology together with SSAB and Vattenfall to use hydrogen produced with electricity to reduce the iron ore, well known as the hybrid project. The technology to make fossil-free steel. Another example, Volvo Group has now produced the first dumper from fossil-free steel. In 2026 is the plan that we will be up and running with the demonstration plant to reach full industrial capacity in 2030. But we are not stopping there. We are planning for a total transformation of LKAB's entire production before 2045. A transformation that will save our customers, primarily in the European steel industry, about 40 to 50 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions and support them in their decarbonization efforts in a cost-efficient way. Secondly, our depots contains, beside the iron mineral magnetite, also the mineral apatite, which has a high degree of phosphorus and some degrees of rare earth elements. We are now in a feasibility study aiming to build an industrial park to produce phosphorus and concentrate for REE. Some examples from other companies. Boliden have launched copper and zinc with the market's lowest carbon footprint. KGHM, the Polish-based metal mineral miner, has started to build their own electricity produced to reduce dependency on fossil-generated power. Our company, LKAB, uses around 2 terawatt hours annually today. When we have transformed the company, our needs of electricity will be more than 70 terawatt hours annually. The same goes for the other industries that are decarbonizing. We need a swift process for building new capacity for production of fossil-free power generation. What we all know is that there is no silver bullet to solve these challenges. Wind power on land has all-known challenges with the use of land. It can be built rather quick and at reasonable price. Wind offshore is somewhat more expensive than onshore. Hydropower can we see a possibility on margin to raise the efficiency in existing power stations, but there are challenges with biodiversity. Finally, nuclear power. It is far more expensive, will take time, at least 10 years from now to build, and have challenges with fuel and waste. Here, the political system on national and European level must leave the declarations and put their things together to create a long-term energy policy that responds to the need of the industry from today and up to 2050. As I said, there is no silver bullet. We will need a mix of all those fossil-free production lines, and we need to start to build now. Given the time, I would urge the decision makers on all the levels to first have an insightful discussion on how we can manage the transformation from a position where we cannot put all our trust in globalization, free trade, and import as a solution for getting access to these raw materials, to a position where Europeans actively increase our extraction of essential metals and minerals. Northern Sweden and Northern Scandinavia are the frontrunners in creating fossil-free, independent value chains from the mine to consumer-ready products. The value chain starts here. We have the raw materials, the energy, the will and the ability to continue to lead the transformation. If the society wants, we can do it in the most sustainable way, with a minimum of pollution, caring the biodiversity, respecting social needs in a profitable and competitive way. The transformation will start here. Secondly, develop policies or regulations that facilitates the mining industry to increase exploration and mining activities, which makes it possible to pursue overriding public interest, balancing not in my backyard. This goes for mining, for electricity production and transmission. Today we have a situation with a non-coherent policy. It is difficult to live up to all different directives and regulations on European and national level, as we have layers of regulations. The permitting process must be transparent and efficient. Today it can take up to 10 years to get permit for mining or transmission. Our industry not only welcome high environmental standards, but every day we work hard to transcend them. We need immediate action. Actions that endorse decarbonization at the same time as it builds growth, competitiveness and strategic independence for Europe. If you want it, we can mine it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, very much for these words. You were touching a little bit upon this geopolitical situation we're in, and this giant transition that your company is undertaking at the moment. How has the geopolitical situation affected your plans?
Oh, they have affected them a lot. And I would say in a lot of different ways. First, of course, the market has changed dramatically. As you know, both Russia and Ukraine are large exporters of both iron ore, steel, and a lot of base metals, which of course have had an influence in our market. The next thing, as I mentioned in my presentation, was the energy crisis. It has put a total new focus on our needs of energy. So in those two respects, we have a fire in inflation that I would say perhaps is in the short sight the most dangerous things for us, because with all our investments, looking to see an inflation of perhaps 5 to 10% going forward, it will be perhaps somewhat not difficult but challenging to do all these investments in the geopolitical situation as we have today, with a non-secure energy base, non-secure inflation base, and a non-secure of raw material.
When one reads about your transition and all the energy that it will need, quite only in a few years or in the next decade, that's a huge increase compared to today.
Yeah.
So how does that, only the energy part affect you?
The problem, I would say, is to understand the different time phases. What we will have is a phase, perhaps, who knows, 2 to 5 years, that it will be very problematic to understand where will the European industry, the European geopolitical impact goes. What we're doing now, we are planning for a 50-year perspectives. So if we really want to deal with the climate change, we must replace coals as reagent agent for iron ore and go into electricity and hydrogen. So I will say it's more a question about time. How long time will we accept that this will take? Because that will so to say, be the key driver for how fast can we produce electricity. But of course now we have to, on a European stage, first replace Russian gas, will it be with Norwegian gas, and then with sustainable electricity. That will be a challenge.
Yeah, but the energy crisis that we go through in Europe now, will it slow down your transition?
I used a lot of words to say, I don't know.
Okay.
When you do these types of investments, then when you come to that critical point to do that, then you have to have the stability to ensure that we can do these investments without endanger the company, which means that we will probably take a decision within 12 to 18 months. And it will depend a lot of how will the political or geopolitical situation be at that time, and what type of inflation will we have.
Over to something else. Your mine here in Kiruna is the largest underground iron ore mine in the world. And I guess everybody is quite aware of that. You have recently moved the city center to here where we're at right now. What is the feeling of the CEO of LKAB walking the new streets in the new city center?
Yeah, I must say I'm impressed. Very impressed of what has been done here in Kiruna. It was the 15th of August, the board for LKAB, and that was my first board meeting as a new CEO for LKAB, took the decision to invest in the city hall just outside here, which I would guide you all to try to have a visit in that. It was 2015. 2016, we visit this site with the board, and then it was just taking off all the woods and stocks and starting to build the new city hall. And now, 6 years later, we have a new city center. So it's amazing.
I've heard rumors that in a few decades you might have to move the city again.
Actually, as a miner, I hope so. Because that means that we have expanded the deposits so dramatically so we can continue to mine, and then perhaps we don't talk about decades, we talk about centuries, but hopefully it will not be throughout my lifetime, but you never know.
Okay.
You never know.
Last question.
We will not move it.
Okay. Not during your lifetime.
No.
Full stop. Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Then they can move it.
Finally, in a week, we might have a new government.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of challenges in your presentation. What is top priority on your political wish list?
I think the governor was into that issue, and that is actually to get the new government to understand the importance of base industry and what actually is happening up here in north, and also the ability that we could set the total new world standard regarding sustainable value chain. And I'm not quite sure that they really understand that. And if they don't understand it and give us the opportunities to do this, to make it possible to do all the investments by getting access to land, getting access to permits, getting access to sustainable electricity, then the time frame will be prolonged. So I really hope that they will take time to learn and understand.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jan Moström, CEO of LKAB. Now we keep our fingers crossed. We have our first online speaker of today with us. Is it up and running, Linus? Excellent. This is Assistant Professor Simon Michaux from the GTK, Geological Survey of Finland. And he has made some interesting findings on the raw materials situation in Europe during his research. Please welcome Simon Michaux. So, can you hear us, Simon?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. So, please go ahead. Everybody can see you.
Okay. All right, I'll start. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to your conference. I'm going to give you a lightning-fast summary of two pieces of work. What I'm going to show you is the calculations for the quantity of metals to manufacture just one generation of renewable technology to completely replace fossil fuels. So this is the work that was released last year. This is the first half of the work. It's a public domain report. It's a little on the long side, sorry about that, but it was necessary due to the nature of the topic to actually deliver. What this report has done is where I've looked at the physical tasks done industrially by fossil fuels and mapped the whole system. And then I determined the true scope of useful work with the understanding that each energy system has an energy efficiency. And if we were to knock out fossil fuels like internal combustion engines and everything else, and if we were to replace them with equipment that we've actually got on the market now, what would that look like? And if everything's electric, everything needs electrical power. So how much electrical power would be needed if we summed everything together? Now, the first generation of work, we didn't have an energy mix, so I had to make one. And so I just took the energy mix in 2018 for non-fossil fuels and expanded up to the needed quantity of power. And then that gave us the number of power stations of average size. The second generation of work has a different energy mix, which I will discuss very briefly. So in this report, there's the number of vehicles by class, number and size of batteries, an understanding of when you'd use an electric vehicle and when you'd use a hydrogen fuel cell. There are estimates of both the rail system and the maritime shipping fleet if they are all electric battery operated or if they are hydrogen fuel cell operated. I couldn't find anything that actually was able to tackle this in a practical way. The information wasn't in a form that was useful, so I actually went and did these calculations myself, such as they are. There are estimates of phasing out fossil fuel industrial applications for like generating power, gas and coal, and heating of buildings. I looked at the feasibility of expanding the nuclear power plant fleet. Like, can nuclear be the primary energy source? And the other one I looked at was the feasibility of biofuels. Like, what would happen if all ICE technology was substituted for biofuels? Plastics and fertilizers were also looked at. So all of this is in one place. What this does not include is the fossil fuels directly used by industry in direct consumption to generate heat for manufacture. And that, things like coking coal, that consumes about a little bit more than half of the coal and about 40% of the gas. So the numbers that I'm about to show you, while they're large, they are somewhere between conservative and way too small. So what do we do to replace the existing system? So this is enough chit chat. We're going to phase out fossil fuels. Let's do it. Okay, so the system that you see around you, we want to keep that system operational, but now we're going to have it non-fossil fuel. So for the next few years, we're going to implement non-fossil fuel systems as fast as humanly possible. So fast that it's going to be very difficult to predict. But there'll come a point when the existing system, as you see now, is completely replaced. And after that, we'll settle into a more stable economic growth, or so we'd like to think. This point here, I would like to model. And now, presumably, that's sometime in our future. In 2017, I heard in Brussels at a European Commission meeting that this will be fully done by 2030. Right? And I remember thinking at the time was that that's not going to go to plan. Now we're talking, they've committed to 30% done by 2030. So, all right. What this means is when you walk down the street, all the cars and trucks, they're no longer ICE, they're either an EV or a hydrogen fuel cell. The lights that are coming out of the ceiling and the computers that you're all looking at are now powered and manufactured by non-fossil fuel systems. That's the target. So I looked at the transport fleet size, cars, trucks, rail, maritime shipping, and aviation. And I did this for the United States, who had the best data, the European Union E28 as it was in 2018, China, I mapped the Chinese system, that was an education. And the fourth calculation was the global system at large, as in everyone on the planet. I'm showing you today the numbers of the fourth calculation, the global system. That gave us the number of required batteries and units and solar panels and what have you. Now, to put this in context, in 2018, 84.5% of the global system for primary energy was still fossil fuel based. In 2020, less than 1% of the passenger car fleet, which represents actually a relatively small part of the section, was still was non-fossil fuel. So the vast majority of the system has yet to be constructed. And that is yet to be constructed, it can't be recycled. So the first generation at least must come from mining sources. There was a discussion about the required power grid expansion and what have you. There was also something that hadn't been done very well, was the required power storage to manage intermittent supply from wind and solar. Anyway, if you couldn't be bothered reading the report, fair enough. Just read this little black box. Current plans are not large enough in scope for the task before us, is much larger than the current paradigm allows for. Baseline calculation went something like this. Global fleet was 1.4 billion vehicles. Now, I would have thought someone would have assembled at least the size of the global fleet of ICE vehicles, but I couldn't find it. I found plenty of studies for individual countries, like the United States or China or Europe, but no one that I had found had actually put together everything. Maybe it existed, I just didn't find it. But anyway, so I had to actually estimate that myself, and then I estimated that they went a little under 16 trillion kilometers across the calendar year of 2018. Now, because everything was modeled as an electric battery system and as a hydrogen fuel cell system, I was able to do some direct comparisons that were very interesting. The electric vehicle system required a battery that was 3.2 times the mass of the equivalent hydrogen fuel cell tank. That is, for the same energy storage on board the vehicle could go 3.2 times further or last 3.2 times longer. Right, so that's the case for hydrogen. However, if we're not going to use natural gas to produce hydrogen, we're going to have to use electricity instead. We need 2.5 times more electricity to produce that hydrogen than it is to charge the equivalent electric vehicle system. Put those two together, all short-range transport should be electric vehicle systems. All passenger cars, commercial vans, delivery trucks, and buses, anything that stays inside a city or has a range of less than 100 kilometres. They'd travel 14.25 trillion kilometres across a calendar year. Okay, now things get interesting. To do this, we need 65.19 terawatt hours of batteries just to replace the existing system of all the light vehicles. All other studies I've looked at, the amount of batteries talk in terms of gigawatt hours. I'm at terawatt hours. What I think has happened is other studies have seriously underestimated the size of the global transport fleet. Right, all long-range transport should be powered with hydrogen fuel cells. All heavy Class 8 HCV semi-trailer trucks. All rail transport network that's not electric already. This is the freight, the freight between cities pulled by diesel locomotives. They should be hydrogen. The entire maritime shipping fleet should be hydrogen. Now, to be clear, it is quite possible from an engineering point of view to have these all these systems electrically run an electric battery. But when you sum them all up together and scale them up, there's a logistic bottlenecks that make it more sense for them to be hydrogen fuel cells. We will need 200 million tons of hydrogen annually if we're to do this. So here's the vehicles, electric vehicles. That's the amount of power we will need on an annual basis to charge those vehicles. To phase out industry, electrical power generation, building heating, and coal-fired steel manufacture, we will need about 20,000 terawatts. This is the hydrogen economy. Those vehicles, that distance, that amount of hydrogen. To make that hydrogen, we need that amount of power. Now, I looked at biofuels, and it may be the most sensible way to keep the aviation industry going. It may be the only way to keep the plastics industry going with bioplastics. And it also could be the only way to source our fertilizer for future food production when petrochemicals become a liability. But we are very much over our skis with what we're harvesting from the environment already. And so a genuine sustainability audit with this in mind needs to be done that has economic sustainability, but also biodiversity sustainability, and a bridge between the two needs to be done. This doesn't exist as I understand at the moment. The information is there, but it's not in a sensible form to use in this context. Right, so here are these numbers shown graphically. The column on the left is what we did in 2018. 26,614 terawatt hours was generated. This is the proportion that's non-fossil fuel that we can keep and use. Note, nuclear is the grey. The white, oil, gas and coal, that's what we've got to phase out. The column on the right is the green. This is what we've got to bring in. So we are now discussing making an electrical system, power system, that's substantially larger than the existing system, using energy that's quite expensive and relatively complex and not as effective. Okay, the jobs are charge the batteries, make the hydrogen, replace electrical power generation, heat the buildings, and phase out coal-fired steel manufacture as the skin across the top. Now, this is generation 2 for energy mix. The ARENA IEA, the ARENA report in 2022 presented an energy mix prediction of what it would be in 2050. So I took that mix. They still had gas, so I took the gas out and then adjusted accordingly. And adjusted, I came up with this energy mix for how things could be in 2050. This is a prediction for the future, and I've just mapped that onto the numbers that I have here. I also collected information with regard to the performance of these power systems in 2018. Not what they said they will do, but what do they actually deliver at the end of the year. And I had individual power stations, and they were summed together in statistics. So I had the metrics for the average station across each of these energy types. And that gave us the number of power stations of average size we will need in each sector. and you sum them up, and that's how we get to the 586,000. Put this in context, the current power plant fleet, well, in 2018 rather, it was 46,423. So this reflects the energy return on energy invested ratio difference between existing fossil fuel systems and these renewable power systems we bring in. We need many, many more of them. Right, so now we're going into the second part of the work, where we're going to calculate the metals. So here are the number of technology units. So we've got electric vehicles and their batteries. We've got hydrogen fuel cells. Now, the hydrogen fuel cells, I was just going to estimate only the platinum content. I was not able to get the metal content for the rest of the system, but it still worked. The amount of wind turbines, wind and solar will represent about 70% of the energy cut, according to this. And there's the solar panels. Now, for wind and solar, for 4 weeks only, which is a very conservative estimate, is down the bottom. That's 2017 terawatt hours, or about 30 times what the electric vehicles will require. Now, my calculations have got 48 hours and 4 weeks for just wind and solar only. But once we remove the gas industry, which is actually the current buffer to balance the system, even this won't be enough. Now, put this in context, the full system size is about 46,000 terawatts a year. And so we want 2,000 terawatts a year to balance that system. It really is actually quite small. There's been a few screams of pain on Twitter about this. So here are the numbers. This is a short presentation, so I'm just showing you the final outcome. It's about 36 tables of data to actually get to this point. There is a presentation I can put in the chat when we're done if you're interested to actually have a closer look at the numbers. Now, the red is the total metal required, all the metals summed together, to make one generation of electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, hydrogen fuel cells, solar panels, and their associated batteries. Now, that's with a 4-week buffer for wind and solar. One of the literature's elements I found from 2012, like 10 years ago, they suggested only 48 hours. Given that wind varies in the scale of weeks and sometimes months, that's not going to work. But we put it in anyway. So that's the blue. The yellow is reported global reserves as of 2022 from the US Geological Survey. And the black is metal produced in 2019. Now, this is the mining industry. I've used 2019 because that's the last year before COVID pandemic supply disruptions, and it might be the last year of sensible data that we get for some time. So note that that's a log scale. There is many, many years of production, sometimes thousands of years of production at the 2019 rates to hit the target to make one generation. So remember, this is for the first generation of units. They'll wear out in 10 to 25 years, after which they'll need to be replaced. Now, this is back to most vehicles still ICE in 2020, and renewables represented about 4% of the global energy generation split. The vast majority of the system is not constructed yet, and it cannot be recycled. And if it was all constructed next year, it would not be until 2033 when large volumes will be available. I'm coming to the end. And so the first generation at least must come from mining. Now, this is copper. Prior to 2020, we extracted 700 million tons of copper throughout history. To keep up with economic growth, we will mine the same in the next 22 years. Current reserves are 880 million tons, which is about 30 years. We want to mine 4.6 billion tons of copper for just one generation of this technology. That's 6 times historical mining. It's probably not going to work. And there's our rates of copper discovery. They're going down. Okay. This is the second last slide. At the moment, when we're actually talking about human society, we talk in terms of economics and technology sometimes. But what's really happening is we have 4 aspects: technology, energy, economics, and minerals. You cannot have one without the other 3. And it's explicitly understood that all of these systems are harvesting raw materials from the planetary environment as feedstock. This is how the system's really structured, and any new system will have to be the same. Conclusions: current thinking has seriously underestimated the task. Nuclear is not going to, it can't be the only source. It can't scale up in time. Biofuels are important, but cannot replace petroleum. Battery chemistries other than lithium ion will be developed. but each one will require different minerals required. The energy return on energy invested ratio for renewable energy systems is much lower than the existing fossil fuel systems. We must face the facts that renewable energy technology may not be strong enough to replace fossil fuels. We have no other option, though. We will do it. Current mining and current mineral reserves are nowhere near good enough. Metals of all kinds are about to become more valuable. There's an evolution of the industrial ecosystem is likely, and there's a coming renaissance for the exploration and mining of minerals. Kiitos. Done. Questions? Are you still there?
Thanks a million, Simon, for this, and very promising. It's almost, organizing conferences like this, you want to squeeze in so many different things. It's almost unfair when the findings are so interesting as yours. So thanks a million, Simon. We will, instead of a thank you gift, we will virtually send a donation to the UNHCR in your name. So thank you very much.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Thank you again. I say welcome to my colleague, the Director of Environment at Svemin, Kristina Branteryd.
It's not easy to talk to you after we heard Simon. You can just imagine what happened inside my body. I was so positive until Simon talked. My name is Kristina Branteryd. I work at Svemin. Since a year ago, I'm responsible for the environmental topic. And you can just imagine how happy I am to see you all here gathered in this room since I started during the COVID. Is there something wrong?
No.
No?
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Is there something wrong? My hair? No, just kidding. But I have something serious I would like to talk to you about. I think Jan Moström said it really well, but I will start with a short summary of what he really said. You know, I'm quite old. It is more than 30 years ago when I finished university. At that time, the scientists said that it will be at least 30 more years before we have the simplest metals in the loop so we can recycle them. They talked about steel and iron. It's not even out there yet. And the scientists say about the same thing today. It's not even enough metals in the loop yet to recycle them. Because a lot of people tell me we don't need mines, we can recycle. And I tell them, dear, if we don't have mines, you can't eat, you have no shoes, and you have nowhere to stay. So this is really serious. We need mines. And you here in the room, for you it's so obvious that we do need mines. But it's not obvious for everyone. Please change picture. I stole the picture, so you cannot show them to anyone else. No, I'm not so good at this. And then how? I pushed everything, Linus. Okay. Can you help? Sorry. This is what my lives look like, always. So where was I? Yes, if you need mines, if you understand that, my friends, you have to talk with everyone around you, because we need a larger understanding of this, because this is the ground for all knowledge. We must understand we do need mines. And if we do need mines, where do you think we should mine? We must have a rich bedrock. We must mine with the least environmental impact you can imagine. We have to be very serious about sustainability topics. And we also have to have the human rights in place. And where in the world are we now? We are actually here. So that is a nice way to see it. We are in the right place. And when we talk about environmental performance, I would say that I'm proud of the mine industry. You have done really well, and you have worked with these topics for a long, long time. And you can talk about the board members, and you can see that they have had those kind of issues on the top of the boards and the agenda for a long, long time. Same with sustainability topics and human rights. It was a long time since we have children doing the job in our mines. But still, when you go to other places and talk about this, when you are not in the room, the other people here, they still do think that the mine is the worst thing that ever can happen to the locals, to the region, to the nation, to EU and to the world, because the understanding is not there. So what my bump is that I would like to talk about is actually regulations. Because in EU, we have decided together, because EU is us here in the room and everyone else down in Brussels and wherever they are, we have decided on a great package on an environmental topic, which is so good. It's coming new regulations, it's coming old regulations that we have overlooked again, made greater, grander, deeper, whatever. And that is good. We can be proud of that. We have Toon Smets with us today from the Commission. He will talk about the Industry Emission Directive. We have Umberto Delgado Rosa with us later on. He will talk about biodiversity, another great topic that is really important. But when we do this, we can always say that it's good in the great picture. We agree on the great picture. We understand it. But where is the devil? The devil is in the details. And this is where we all have to work together. I think all of you in this room have to do your homework even better. Because we have to be in this kind of extremely machinery of regulation process more than we ever have been before. Even when the first small little embryo of a thought of a new regulation is formulated, we have to be there, understand it, and make it the best. And I'm not saying that the mines will be considered something beside the regulations, or that we are going to create regulations that doesn't take the environmental and the sustainability issues really seriously. I say the opposite. But you know, there is the devil in those small details anyway. It's coming new regulations now. I think I have another picture too. It's coming new regulations talking about biodiversity. We'll hear about more of that later. And you know, you are so skilled in these topics because you understand biodiversity. First of all, that is a quite complex matter. Not everyone understands what that is. And we are saying from EU side that we are going to restore the ecosystem that is not in balance today. That sounds great. I also want that. But in the proposal that is there now, we say that when you started the restoration, it becomes a kind of no-go area. This is one of those bumps that I think we have to try to work with, actually. Because if you can't go there when you start to restore it, what will happen to the mine sector? That is one part. But I can also say it's maybe not even the best way to do it for the biodiversity, because maybe you have to change place sometimes. Maybe the restoration is not working properly. So many of those tasks are not just only for the mine industry, it's for the best of everything. My pictures is not working, are they? I don't mind them. That's okay. That's okay. So what I really would like to say, that even if we are really brilliant in our performance, we can talk about biodiversity roadmap here for the mines. We have it over there, where we have had a roadmap so interesting for other countries that we had to translate it to Mandarin and to Spanish and to English and so on. Still, there might be a little detail in the regulation coming on biodiversity that actually puts the end to our industry. It is actually that serious. We also made a climate roadmap that is really good. A lot changed since we released it this summer, but I think you in the mine industry, you made your homework in all those kind of topics, but it's not really enough. Du får gärna byta bild om det går. Because we have to be more in this regulation process. How many times did I say that now? Do I need to say it one more time? I'll say it one more time. Then I won't say it anymore. Because I need your help. We have to do this together. We have to talk about mines wherever we go. We have to be in this machinery from Brussels with the regulation really early. And we have to do it in the best way. And this is not only for the mine industry. It is for the regions, the local, the region, the nation, and EU. Because what EU is doing today, they are importing materials from other countries where not even human rights are in place. And the environmental footprint is huge, and the sustainability issues are not really on the agenda. And no one of us wants that, I think. Because let it happen here in the north of Sweden. Let us do it together. Let us even make the impossible possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristina. Thank you a lot. Before you jump off the stage, I would like, you mentioned a lot of challenges. But what would you say is what is the most worrying issue that Europe is dealing with?
If I'm not thinking of what Simon said, no, if I keep it to my sphere, I would just say that the regulation package that is coming, it will come again and again. I think it is those details. In overall picture, it's good, but you know, it is in the details, it can really end sector's possibility to continue. So that I would say that.
So the most worrying are the details?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now we understand. Okay, we now all go home and do our homework. Thank you very much, Kristina, again. What is waste, really, and what is an asset? And is waste always a potential asset? In the mining industry, we have had the privilege to update our former perception about this very dramatically. Our last speaker before lunch break is Chief Strategy Officer at Business Area Special Products at LKAB. Please welcome David Högnelid.
Let's see here if we get the audio working. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Good, thank you. And the switcher, I can get the presentation on us. So, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to speak here. And I'm going to speak about one of our innovation projects at LKAB. Before doing so, I'd like to start with the topic of the day, what we've all been talking about here today. Everybody's reinforcing it, but I don't think it can be said enough and too many times. It starts in the mine. And I think we've seen an emergence of the concept of value chain understanding today with everything that's happened today in the geopolitical perspective. But we must remember it's not only products that we talk about. Each and every service is included in this also. It's a prerequisite for those value chains as well. And that is something I'd like to challenge wherever I present. I challenge someone, can you please provide an example of a value chain that doesn't require mining? I haven't yet been proven wrong on that. I'm sure there is some exception, but not in the modern world. I'm going to talk specifically about two examples of products and their reliance on the mining and the situation we have in the global landscape today and how we can address that. The first one is about rare earth elements. And as Simon pointed out in a very, very good way, these requirements are increasing. And what we can say is that Europe needs these rare earths. But we have no extraction, zero, and marginal refinement. And why is that? Well, we can see here that China dominates extraction. They have been even more dominant before. Other countries have come in. Also, China mines illegally in Myanmar, as an example. That was a news piece this summer. That creates hiccups and scares throughout the value chain, of course. No one wants to be associated with that. Due to their control of the extraction, they've also been able to control the downstream activities. And that's an important realization when you think of value chain perspectives. Because if you don't have extraction, what's the likelihood of setting up downstream activities? Okay, you might say, well, is it then only mineral processing? Well, no, actually it continues on, as you can see in this chart here. It continues on to the metals creation, it continues on to then the product manufacturing. And what's the next step? Well, if we talk about automotives, wind turbines, do we want to control that part of the value chain as well? Those industries would say yes. And really thinking of that, the example here is wind industry. Where are we investing in wind? Well, that's in Europe. We need this. If we talk about specifically the rare earth elements, it is two of them primarily, neodymium and praseodymium, that is really needed for the rare earth elements, for the permanent magnets. It's only sort of 20% of the volume, but it's 80% of the value. So there are 17 of them, but they're also used in many other applications. So rare earths are essential for the green transformation. Another example are mineral fertilizers. You've heard a lot about them recently, probably due to the Ukraine war. There are three nutrients in mineral fertilizers. You have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Potassium and phosphorus are mined resources, while nitrogen is produced, as you know. The situation in Europe is that we only have one producer, so we're import dependent for more than 90% of our phosphorus. And this is, of course, highly important, even more so today. And you can see that from the balance of our imports, the majority until February this year came from two countries, Russia and Morocco. Russia, obviously, no one wants to import from there. There are no legal restrictions to do so, but no one wants to do that. Morocco, we don't want to import from either. There are civil rights issues with the Western Sahara, but also they have cadmium in their phosphorus. So that's a heavy metal that contaminates food and causes osteoporosis and cancer. We don't want that in our food either. So there are limits to what we can do. And when you look at these kind of systems, when you see disruptions, it's sort of fantastic to see how they're set up just in time and how the logics are created. It's a very sensitive system for disruptions. Luckily, there are examples of solutions. We can provide one such, and it's depending on the mineralization that we have. We have prospected and have then reported 4 billion tons of resources. That is, to put in perspective, since the start in 1890, we have mined 2 billion tons. And this is, of course, important because it's our long-term business that we're creating by adding more reserves and resources and upgrading them. Besides iron ore, we have prospected for phosphorus and REs as well, and we can see that the historical sort of contents match well with the future. And in some of our ore bodies, there are higher contents of phosphorus and REs that I'll come back to. So with our strategy going deeper, decarbonizing our mining, making sure we have resources, we've also made sure that we have a long-term plan on how to produce iron ore by the transformation into sponge iron, so decarbonizing that part as well. Put together then, we have a potential to be in mining right now beyond 2060. That then provides a possibility and opportunity for us to then extract other critical mineralizations that we have in our ore bodies that are today put on deposits. The concept that we have developed is one that is based on the primary mining. I'll come back to that because that's really, really crucial. And from that, we get a waste product that contains around 10% of the phosphate mineral apatite. with the mineralizations, they also bind together some REs and fluorine and other mineralizations as well. So the first step is that in Kiruna and Gällivare, we produce apatite concentrate from the tailings. Then we take that concentrate down to the industrial park that we're planning in Luleå, where we do chemical processing, dissolve this in acids, in hydrochloric acid to be precise, and then separate and extract different mineralizations. And to further add value of the main product, which will be phosphoric acid, we add ammonia and produce a mineral fertilizer that is ready to be distributed to the market. So you can see iron ore comes first, that's a prerequisite. Next we produce phosphoric acid and phosphoric mineral fertilizers. And as we're able to do that, we can also extract REs, fluorine, and we get a byproduct of gypsum. So we can't begin at the bottom saying we want REs, we need to start at top, making sure we have the prerequisites with iron ore production. That's why we talk about a circular mine. Is it a concept? Is it a marketing thing? No, it's not. And it's about the whole concept itself, but also about the definition of what is circular. And that's part of terminology and taxonomy as well. I think we'll touch on that later on. We also have made sure that we want to utilize as much of these concepts as possible. One really exciting thing is the collaboration we have with Boliden for the production of sulfuric acid from their mine waste, pyrite. Seeing that two of these big companies up in the north can come together and create value together that they couldn't do at their own. We need a long-term commitment together. Then we can securely invest together as well. Of course, renewable energy is needed as well as the prerequisites otherwise. This will require quite a lot of investments and expansions in our business altogether, as it is really something that starts upstream in the mine. So we will need the next generation of the mining. We will need new plants for apatite production in our mine sites. That will impact the permit situation there. We're adding new flotation reagents there. And we will require capacity on the ore railway to get down to the harbors, to Luleå. And we will require investments in Luleå for this plant as well. And that's so we'll keep coming back to the system perspective here. We can't do this as a standalone exercise. It's something that we have to do sort of in a planning that binds it all together. This is how the plan looks right now for the industrial park in Luleå. We had a public consultation during spring where we presented these plans and what we're aiming to do. And it's building up on the area where we're already active. You can see in blue there are the new plan activities. The dark gray ones here, right by the harbor, is our existing facilities today. They look small here, but they are much bigger in reality, I promise you. They handle more than 5.5 million tons today annually we ship out through there. So you can imagine there's some scale to it. And that perhaps puts this in perspective. This is a large footprint and large investment as well. We are in the end of the feasibility stages. We will next year start the pre-engineering, the detailed engineering of this to finalize the plans, to be able to go up to our board and say, these are our plans of what we're going to do. We're planning on being up and running by 2027. So next year, March timeframe, we plan on handing in our permit applications, environmental permits. And I'd like to just address also the Critical Raw Materials Act. President von der Leyen said in her State of the Union, she addressed this as a critical topic in Europe. Lithium and rare earths are already replacing gas and oil at the heart of our economy. By 2030, our demand for these rare earth metals will increase fivefold. And this is good, because it shows that our European Green Deal is moving fast. And that is really the essence of what we heard about before from Simon as well. But there is a challenge here. We don't even have enough resources prospected to suffice with this. And then, I mean, we recently started prospecting and accounting for our reserves because they were not the primary objective of our operations. And I can imagine there are others like that. And that's really why we must consider that the objectives that she put forward next there was talking about trade policies, partnerships, yes, important, but it won't suffice. The undersupply will grow. And if we look at then the narrower concept of recycling that is mentioned and often referenced, recycling from discarded products, etc., that will, as a maximum, according to one report I recently took part of, in 2035 be around 15% of Europe's need when it comes to REs. So we must enter more into the loop of use before being able to take it out. That's why it's so important to include a circular mining, the concept here as well, in this act. Because if we do that, we may have an opportunity to actually push forward to get more products out of the system that is already mined. There are lots of companion products, byproducts, and waste products today that aren't processed because we don't have the financial incentives or the environmental possibilities to do it, basically, or the technological possibilities. So we hope that we can lead the way and be an example here as well. And ending on that note here, a piece of information on our opportunities. We are today mining those mines in blue. That's the phosphorus levels in our existing mines. And as you can see in Kiruna, as an example, it's very low. No one in the right mind would put forward to a board that we're going to do primary extraction of phosphorus. If we look at the Per Geijer, the ore body that we're now prospecting for intensely and they're planning on handing in concession permits for next year, it's up to 8 times higher there. Would that be enough to justify a mine? Perhaps not, but still, if you see that the potential here, when we start thinking of this and mining several products, then we can alone support Europe's needs for 25% of its phosphorus needs in agriculture, while also securing more mineral reserves via north for Europe. That's what I would like to just leave you with today.
Thank you, David. Thanks a lot, and that's quite something, you know. You're such a big producer or something. Just a quick question before we head into the lunch break. The heaps, the waste, have been there for decades. Why not until now?
Well, because of the technological capacity and because of the sort of financial situation. Has it been profitable? We used to produce apatite in Kiruna actually up until the 80s, but it was not financially profitable at that time. And that has to do with how much we further process it. So we then only produce apatite. Now we're planning on doing more with it. But it also is, of course, volume related. And we start now with the what we call the fresh tailings. So what is coming out of our processing plants today. But of course, we realize that the dams that we have now, that's a future, of course, resource and reserve that we'd like to look at. Other challenges with that, of course, safety of the dams, permitting, and so on.
Okay, so demand, really, in technological development. Thank you immensely, David, for giving us this glorious presentation.